Hello, I am Holy Cheeseburger. I am a dungeon master, and, by extension, a storyteller. And, well, you were so kind as to stop by. How about I tell you a story? A tale of adventure, dungeons, caves, monsters, as well as song and dance and festive winter's cheer. This is the story of the Intrepid Buffoons who saved Yule. 'Twas a lovely Yule year in 1473, as the people of Jorden had hearts filled with glee. Such was quite respected and traditional, to welcome this being with a great festival. Yes, this was the last of the festivals of Yule, a series of celebrations with not many rules. When Nick of the Yule would appear to some, bringing gifts of kindness, warmth, and song. And before the sun rose, sleeping in their rooms, Edward, Felix, and Atsuko had dreams of gloom, for only they sensed that something was amiss, while the rest of Jorden enjoyed festive bliss. As the party awoke to the sun's red glow, they went downstairs to listen to the radio. They hoped to hear word of the elusive Saint Nick, so they could locate him and enjoy the music. But as they listened closely, their hearts filled with dread, as the program wore on with no sign of his sled. Atsuko exclaimed, "I knew something was off, with those omens of darkness filling our heads." "But what should we do?" Edward asked with confusion. "We haven't a lead, and nothing's been proven." "I have an idea," claimed Felix with gumption, "though it would involve a mythical presumption." "Well, say it," said Atsuko. "It's all we've got." "All right," replied Felix, "but it is just a thought. For clues on his whereabouts to and fro we might roam, but I think it would be best to start at his home." "Ah, so that's at the North Pole, right?" asked Edward, imagining the great snowy white. "Of course not," replied Felix. "There's something else there. A gateway to a plane of frigid despair." "Wait a minute," Edward snapped, turning his attention, for thanks to his 17 passive perception, over the sound of the squabble he heard a broadcast on the radio of ominous words. "People of Yore-den," a woman's voice said, a familiar voice which filled Atsuko with dread. "I'm sending this message around all the world to inform you all of what soon will unfold. Saint Nick is right here with me in the Frostburden, where I'm making sure to give him special attention. So have a nice Yule Eve without your Saint Nick." Then the broadcast ended with the sound of a click. The group sat for a moment, quiet as a rock, especially Atsuko, her face full of shock. She decided to roll insight, staring daggers and knives, but rolled a nat 4 for a total of 5. As such, she was unsure why Charlotte would do this, but she had a bad feeling, no need yet to prove it. "I don't like this," she said as they ordered some food. "If Charlotte's involved, it cannot be good." "The Frostburden?" asked Ed as he smiled with glee, and made a nature check, rolling a 14. Come to think of it, that's the one at the polls. I would love to go there and enjoy the great cold. This is no time for leisure, Atsuko snapped. We must rescue this Yule figure Charlotte has kidnapped. It's true, agreed Felix, but we need a plan. We need to keep warm, but I don't think we can. Our last venture was bold, but this one is bolder. We've cold weather clothing, but this place is colder. With the air turning into liquid nitrogen rain, and ice just like rocks, it is all quite a pain. And so they prepared in their various ways. For their northward trip they were ready in a day. They traveled to Nordir by sky, then set forth, marching on foot for their long journey north. After several days, with a guide to assist, the group came upon a pillar of mist. With this, the guide declared that they had reached their goal, as this was the planar door at the North Pole. The party made payments, then said their goodbyes as they stepped through the portal while leaving their guide. Edward rolled for survival and got a 15, while Atsuko followed up with an 18. Between the two checks they found Charlotte's trail, twisting and turning through a thick, icy veil. They traversed the ice forest, valiant and brave, until they arrived at the mouth of a cave. Felix for once didn't stay at the back, as he made an investigation check to find traps. He rolled a 17, mediocre for him, though the chances that something stayed hidden were slim. They climbed through the tunnels which turned and twisted, fighting riddles and remorazes of which this consisted, and finally they neared a distant blue light. They entered the last chamber, shocked at the sight. At the room's center was a faceless ice statue, a warrior made by the DM's own homebrew. And off to the right, tied up in a chair, was a strange snow tabaxi with a fearful stare. The party deduced that this must be Saint Nick, with his fluffy white trim and clothes redder than bricks. And next to the statue, with the evilest grin, stood Charlotte herself, gaze sharp as a pin. "Nice of you to join me," she said with a cackle, causing shivers enough to raise Atsuko's hackles. "But don't just assume that I haven't a plan. If I can't have a good Yule, nobody can." "What are you talking about?" Felix demanded. "This is just plain mean and quite underhanded. I have to admit you seem sneaky and sly. And it's clear what you're doing. But we must know why." "Why? Why, you ask?" Charlotte snapped back, as she held back the urge to make an attack. "If you really must know, I'll tell you the story, but don't blame me if it gets excessively boring. When I was a little girl," Charlotte began, "to be very specific, I was 9, maybe 10. Who should I see as he appeared in my village? It was Saint Nick, who saved us all from being pillaged. Now, of course, we were thankful at this miracle. We gave him great gifts, by no means minimal. He sang us some songs and made everything merry, drifting and dancing like some kind of fairy. But then along came myself, just passing by, with a gift for my mother, a nice homemade pie. I saw Nick performing and set the pie down to sit and watch him goof about like a clown. But what should I find once ready to leave but an empty pie tin, which left me aggrieved. I glanced all about the stands and the shops, but then saw Saint Nick himself licking his chops. It was such a good pie, though, Saint Nick protested. I thought it was a gift. I was so interested. It was a gift, Charlotte snapped. Just not one for you. I swore from that day that justice was due. And today is the day, she continued with glee. All of Yule soon will belong to me. Soon the festivities will turn quite solemn, when I defeat you heroes with my ice golem. And with that, the ice statue began to move, a fearsome warrior as it would soon prove, for the battle of which this was indicative. It was time for the party to roll initiative. Ed, with his 16, took up the lead, causing spikes to spring forth that would make most bleed. He then summoned some stars that looked like a chalice to heal up his friends and protect them from malice. Atsuko followed up with a 14. Not bad for no modifier, most would deem. She pulled out her katana, went into a rage, then slashed at the golem in a furious blaze. Next was the golem, having rolled a 12. It began by mysteriously repairing itself. It slashed Atsuko twice, giant sword in its hand, then stood its ground, ready for something grand. Felix went last with a roll of 11, a +4 dex mod to his natural 7. He zeroed in on his target with a quick hunter's mark, then made 2 loud gunshots with the flash of a spark. The following round was something quite new, as Edward reached over and healed Atsuko's wounds. The golem kept some damage, a little bit stunned, and completely overwhelmed by Felix's gun. However, the golem still had a few tricks, which would soon hit our heroes like a sack full of bricks. Its sword shattered into 1,000,000 pieces, which pierced through the party like cold, bloody breezes. Eventually, they wore down the golem quite a bit, but soon realized that they just couldn't seem to kill it. It looked like for them, this would soon be a scrub, for whenever they downed it, it just got back up. In a panic, Ed breathed out a cold, frosty breath, but just didn't bring it any closer to death. But he didn't realize all of what he had done. By sheer accident, this fight he had won. That wasn't ideal, Atsuko shouted like a savage. It's made of ice, clearly immune to cold damage. But as she spoke, there was no other sound. The golem didn't heal, as it just stayed on the ground. Hooray! You've won! Saint Nick cheered from his chair. I was worried you'd die, but you won by a hair. Then the party went over to untie Saint Nick, but he did it himself with some magical trick. Wait, Felix said, you could escape all this time. We came all this way, and you were just fine. Not really, Nick corrected. My magic's not clear, but it's usually powered by festive Yule cheer. It swells with Yule spirit and wanes with a lack. Therefore we should probably make our way back. No! Cried Charlotte with fury. You ruined my plan with a thunderous flurry. Shut it, snapped Atsuko. Your revenge quest was petty, unlike mine, since you took something precious from me. Really? Asked Charlotte. Well, I will be back, so you better watch out for my next great attack. And with that, she vanished in a puff of smoke. leaving nothing behind to be tracked by these blokes. It wasn't quite clear just where she went, perhaps to some distant land, sowing dissent. With that, the impromptu Yule quest was completed, with Saint Nick rescued and the golem defeated. Well, now what? Asked Ed, with concern on his face. The frost verdant's unsafe. We should leave this place. I have an idea, replied Saint Nick. Everyone take my hands. I have one more trick. As everyone joined him, he flurried and pranced, until they were transported by the flare of his dance. Suddenly, they appeared in a dimly lit tavern, a much-needed respite from that dark, icy cavern. It was true that Yule was a little bit late, but the patrons agreed that it was worth the wait. The party stayed a bit to join in the fun, but later agreed that their job here was done. They were tired and ready to sleep like a stone, so they asked for directions and made their way home. So that is the story of our intrepid buffoons on their non-canon quest to save Yule from doom. And be you fictional or real, far or near, have a wonderful Yule and a wondrous new year.